What does it take to transform a life shaped by war, poverty, and displacement into one defined by purpose, service, and success? Next Friday, Dr. Patrick Kalenzi shares his extraordinary journey from growing up in a Rwandan refugee family in Uganda to becoming a veterinarian, entrepreneur, author, and respected community leader here in Colorado. Through powerful personal stories, he'll explore how perseverance, gratitude, and determination can turn even life's greatest challenges into opportunities to serve others and make a lasting difference. Don't miss what promises to be an inspiring and unforgettable program.
A couple months ago, actually in the winter, I was at an event at Senator Collins Arsenault's wonderful home in West Boulder, and it turned out that she had the event for a young woman from Uganda who has an NGO there that provides education for women. And very successful at an early age. And I was up at, I don't know if you've ever been to an event that said the sponsors, but the food is incredible. And I was there in this huge spread of food getting ready to chow down. And a fellow standing next to me, and I got into a little conversation. And I asked him about himself, and he told a little bit of his history, and I was just blown away by what he has gone through. And you will hear about that shortly, so I won't get into it. But afterwards, I've gotten to know that he's a veterinarian in the Boulder Lafayette area, successful practice, and Marty Evans' dogs have been seeing him for years, and Bill Anderson's dogs have been seeing him for years. So, and I imagine other people in the room as well. And Dr. Kalenzi, Patrick, I won't go into his history at all, but I will tell you that he is a dog lover, and you can imagine that for a veterinarian. He has two dogs. One is a 72-pound American Stratfordshire, and the other is a 5-pound Chihuahua Maltese mix. Yeah, big little stories. And he also has two wonderful sons. Aaron is 19 and currently a sophomore at CU and a track athlete. And Ian is 17 and a basketball player at Peak to Peak High School. So please give a warm Boulder Rotary Club welcome for Dr. Patrick Kalenzi.
Well, I am honored to be here. And I also have to tell you, I feel home because I thought it was Mr. Gottrom who was gonna be here. Then in the email, I saw there was Marty Evans. And then I realized this is a place where Mr. Bill Anderson was present last year. Then I walk into two other clients, Chris Parks, and so I hope I didn't screw up in the past life where they have bad things about me, but I have a lot of people that know me. And then Mr. Gottrom took the risk of inviting me, so let's get into it. So when people see me, they see a successful veterinarian. They see entrepreneur, they see an author. What they don't see is a little boy who almost died of polio because he couldn't get a vaccine. What they don't see is the little boy who was a refugee and was never expected to have a future. And then also, they don't see all the other stuff that we're gonna talk about. Today, I'd like to share not just my story, I like to share my journey and what I've learned along the way. My hope is that when you live today, you will see a diversity not as an end to someone's story, but just as their beginning. So I was born into a refugee family. Now, refugee, really I wasn't supposed to. I was born in Uganda, second generation born in Uganda. The problem was that my grandfather was born in Rwanda. He had been evicted because of the first genocide the world didn't know, 1958. So when he moved to Uganda, he had my dad in the refugee camp. well, which was Uganda, and then I was born in Uganda myself. But we were not wanted in that country. Every single time you got bullied, you got told to go back. The problem is our country of ethnicity, they didn't want us back. So a few courageous men of the Tutsi tribe, my tribe, found a way to go back and fight for their rights to be in the country. And that's what started the genocide, because the current regime said, you're not coming back. So to eliminate the potential for you to come back, we're gonna kill and wipe out all your tribesmen so they don't support you. And that's where the genocide in 1994 started. Luckily, I wasn't courageous enough to go fight. I stayed in school, but we had many family members who were killed, and then some of them were successful. They took over the government and allowed people to be in their homeland if they wanted to. But growing up in Uganda, we had very little. Food, you didn't know if you were going to get the next meal. School was a luxury. You didn't know if you go to school. I was able to go to school because I had to. In Uganda, you pay for primary school all through secondary school. So I was able to find a way to pay for school by fetching water and taking it to places where they didn't have piped water. So I hawked and traded in potato, and luckily I got enough for school. So it was not easy, but I got the school. When I needed school fees, I cut trees sometimes. Well, forgive me for deforestation and environmental issues, but the trees, we cut them to make charcoal. Charcoal is used in cities where they don't have electricity and they make fire. So I cut charcoal, and I did whatever it took to stay in school. One lesson became clear, and as most of you have traveled abroad, there's usually no one to rescue some of the people that are out there. So I knew for sure no one was coming to my rescue. So that was something I knew, because I kept thinking something was going to change, and no one was coming to my rescue. As a young teenager, around 1982, Uganda entered civil war. At just 14 years old, I was forced into circumstances that are beyond what a normal child should have. I was kidnapped when I was 14. I was drafted into the military. Every day became about survival. But these experiences changed me forever. Yet they also taught me something I still believe today. The strongest people are those who didn't have a choice, but had to be strong. Throughout my childhood, there was one constant force, I call it force of nature and force of wisdom. That was my grandfather. He called me Rabagabo. That name, he coined it when I beat polio, and I beat a coma. I was in a coma for two weeks, but when I came home, he knew that I was going to survive anything, so he called me Rabagabo, which, don't try to pronounce it, it's a tongue twister, and it means courageous boy. He didn't give me money. He could solve problems. He gave me something even more valuable. He convinced me that I was capable of overcoming odds. Sometimes one encouraging voice can change the trajectory of someone's life. So that's what Grandpa did. Against overwhelming odds, I earned admission to the veterinary school. Eventually, I graduated as a doctor of veterinary medicine. So I thought life was going to be smooth and easy. Instead, my father died. My family got evicted and kicked out of the home that we thought was our home, the home I was born. Well, things became a little rough. After the University of Veterinary Medicine in Uganda, it doesn't pay that well. So I looked for a job working from farm to farm, because livestock veterinary medicine pays a little bit better. There was no jobs. I went house to house, treating chickens and dogs, and whatever I earned was enough to take care of my siblings. And some of them at that time, my sisters had come of age and they had their own children. So it was a big family. So I found a way to take care of them. And then I realized that sometimes success does not come, doesn't arrive in big, grand opportunity. It arrives with simply showing up every day. And that's what I did. I showed up every day. I showed up at the university and asked the professors if they had a job that wasn't comfortable for them, they would pass it on to me. I went to other vets and said, hey, if there's something you don't feel comfortable doing, pass it on to me. So I showed up every day, and that's what success takes. When I arrived, I was doing that, my family was getting bigger. And I'm talking about not my children or my wife, I'm talking about my mom, my sisters and brothers, and then nieces, because now they had children. They were getting bigger, so we needed to pay school fees. I needed to pay their rent because we didn't have a home. My income wasn't enough. So I started thinking, what would I do to change this lifestyle? So I decided I'm gonna leave the country. Started thinking maybe to try Germany, Japan, then the language barrier, Australia, not sure. So I thought if I'm gonna make an effort to go to the best place that could pay better in veterinary medicine, I'm gonna start from the top, and that's my philosophy. Try the hardest thing, and then take your way down if it doesn't work. Somehow, in Uganda or African countries, to get an American visa, so I thought America would be the first choice. I'm gonna try, I'm not sure they're gonna give me a visa, but I went and talked to I had an interview, and I didn't have, to get a visa, usually you have to show strings of attachment. You have to have a good financial ability to show that you're going to school, somebody's gonna pay for you, or you have strings that will allow you to return back home. Or you're gonna be a useful investor in the United States. I had none of those. So I did the interview, and the lady asked me, what are you going to do? How can we make sure you're gonna return at some point? So I just told her the truth. I don't have work here. I'm gonna learn veterinary medicine. If I'm successful there, I could use it over there, take care of the family and the communities back. If I'm not staying there, I would have learned something and come and improve communities here. Or she said, come back in the evening and get a visa. And it was a big surprise, because usually it's rich people's kids that get student visas. So when I arrived in the United States, if you're not a citizen or green card holder, it's not easy to work. When I got stuck at the Chicago airport, I had $80 in my pocket and my transit ticket to Kentucky, which was my final destination. I didn't have that added to the itinerary because the person who booked my flight realized I didn't have enough money from Uganda to Chicago and then to Kentucky. So they booked me just only up to Chicago, and I was not wise enough. I didn't know. It was my first time to fly. So when I got to the gate, they said, well, your final destination is here. And I said, there must be a mistake. So I started looking around for a job. The thing is, I went out actually the airport, start working, and you have to fill out these forms about employment. There's a little thing called, are you a citizen or a permanent resident? So 7-Eleven was hiring outside the airport, but that little part, I couldn't do it. So somehow I found my way to Kentucky through a train to, 24 hours later, it's Kentucky. There was a nice family that had allowed to host me for a few weeks, and then I found my way to Colorado. But when I arrived in Colorado, I started delivering newspapers, and I cleaned houses. Then I got a part-time job at a veterinary hospital to do a night shift as a vet assistant. You basically clean kennels and hold dogs. But I had time to study for my national boards. I didn't have time. I had made time. When there were no appointments and we had cleaned all the kennels, I just took a few hours and studied hard. Well, by the grace of God, I passed the national boards, and then I started working at Rwandan Hospital, where I met Miss Marty Evans, and then I did okay. So the community supported me, but I was working for somebody. Well, 14 years later, I asked to get into a partnership. Things didn't work out. Different story. So I got fired. Well, because they thought if I get enough time to transition, I would have enough time to take their clients. Well, that worked out for me, but it didn't work out for them. As my clients found me where I was. So I went ahead and built Rock Creek Veterinary Hospital, and it became a successful hospital. And I got a lot of support from Boulder, Broomfield, and it was a blessing to actually be fired. People ask me, how did you do it? The answer surprises them. It was not intelligence. It was not luck. It was consistency. Small decisions repeated every day And success usually looks ordinary when you actually are building it. Several years ago, I wrote a book, Tears Run Dry, my memoir. Not because my story is unique. Most of you have traveled, to different countries. You've seen people who have gone through struggles. But it's because there are millions of people whose stories are never told. People who survived impossible circumstances. People who simply needed someone to believe in them. My grandfather believed in me. Today, we are adapting my story and my current story of mighty success in Colorado and modifying it, and we're going to make a movie out of it. It's a small movie, big time movie. And then there's the potential for a reality show that's going to be starting to shoot next week, actually, starting on Thursday. They're going to do a test pilot to see if Discovery Channel can pay us. So my life, and that's not because, well, I'll get paid, but the most important thing is that this is a way in which I give back by sharing my story through the memoir, through the movie that can touch many lives and give them hope and inspire them. So that's one way I can reach out to thousands of people that I can't come and talk to, like I'm talking to you. So one reason I'm honored to speak with the Rotary Club, with you, is because the organization represents something that I deeply believe in, and that's service beyond self, creating everlasting impact, integrity, and leadership. Rotary reminds us that success is not measured on the material you have, on what you've accumulated, but how many lives have you touched. And every one of us has the ability to become that person that changes someone's life. If I could leave you today with just two ideas, they'll be these. Your circumstances do not define your future. Persistence is more powerful than perfection. You don't have to move fast. You simply have to keep moving. And that's what I did. It doesn't matter where you come from, whether you're a refugee, whether you're black, whether you're white. It doesn't matter if you're 15 years old or 95 years old, you just have to keep moving. Whether in discipline, diet, exercise, you just have to keep moving. That's what for me. The last and the third is never underestimate encouragement. Any word any one of you says to somebody, it doesn't have to be financial, it could be just an encouraging word. One conversation, one mentor, one opportunity, one act of kindness. Those moments can change a life forever. When I look back, I don't see a perfect journey. I see thousands of small decisions that kept me moving and kept me going. The little boy who once cut trees to pay for school, who was once kidnapped, didn't expect to have a future, could never have imagined standing here before you today. And if my story can prove anything, if it could prove anything at all, it's this. Hope is the greatest investment we can make in another human being. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'm so honored to talk to you.
Patrick, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. I'm curious, it always amazes me how you're such a positive person in light of all the challenges that you've overcome. But I'm curious, as someone who had to overcome so many challenges, Aaron and Ian have been the beneficiaries of all of those challenges. How do you keep your kids focused on being successful and keeping moving when they haven't had to endure the adversity that you have?
Thanks, Bill. I thought you were going to ask about a dog question, but well, that's a good question. Something I struggle with. It's balanced by my wonderful wife, and here's why. She grew up in comfort. Her uncle was a prime minister of Uganda, for God's sake. And you may now think, well, how did the two meet? I was in the ghetto, and then their car broke down, so they had the misfortune of walking through my neighborhood. We met, and I think she says I brought her candy, but it's not true. So my wife is a very good disciplinarian, and she is good at sticking to what you need to do to work hard. Because of, I'm gonna call it trauma, my past trauma, I'm a pushover. I'm a terrible, I don't know how to say, hey, you gotta finish this. For God's sake, Aaron, my 19-year-old, drives a Mercedes compressor. Only thing I was looking for when I was 19 was a good, normal bicycle. So it's hard for me to inspire them, but what I do is there are basic principles they have to do. They have to be disciplined in terms of daily things, food, exercise, and school. And I've seen them work through when they're tired and deal with some problems. And what I do is I talk to them every day about these are the things you have to do to be successful. And I do believe that I've seen a few signs of their potential by pushing through some disappointments, some hard work. And luckily, they have their mom's brain, so they're really good in school. But so that really makes me concerned because they don't have fear of food. They don't have fear of lacking something. They could get a recommendation to anything. If I couldn't write it, Chris Parks would write me a recommendation to a law school in Bill Anderson. So I don't really know what their motivation is, besides that they have good at school and they have a very strong mom. I'm not the one.
Yeah, Dr. Patrick, thanks so much for coming to speak with us. Given your younger self and the different things you went through, what I took away was, what came to my mind was the phrase child soldier. I'm just wondering if I got that right. I met a guy some years ago. He was, in effect, a child soldier in Sri Lanka before he was able to eventually move to Finland on his way. What kind of, did you have any psychological issues, PTSD or all of that? And if you did, how did you get through that? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Child soldier, when the war stopped, I got drafted and we were the second backup where the front line, after they finished the combat, we would just go and carry food or luggage or weapons to, take back. So I didn't get into active duty, but we saw trauma and death. It is traumatic. And how you deal with that is write a book, talk about it, and then have empathy. But unfortunately, in Africa, so the government had a school for child soldiers. When the war finished, I didn't really stay in there because I got injured, and they took me back, and my mom took me to the city where there was no way they could get me back. But most of the kids who got drafted, they ended up in bad shape. Most of them became addicts. Some of them who left the army became, thugs. So it was not a good. It's hard. And Uganda doesn't have counseling or therapy, so it is not easy. For me, I was lucky to not pursue that because I got injured and it took me out. But I know the people who stayed, they had PTSD and it was never treated.
Hi there. Thank you so much for speaking. I was in Rwanda in 1994 on my way to see the gorillas, not knowing that this genocide was about to erupt. And I was traveling to the gorillas, and we had to go through all these military blockades where child soldiers, 13, 14, 16, had these weapons which they actually aimed at us in our vehicle. And so it was real and it was dangerous. And our chauffeur said, do not take any pictures, do not say anything. We did survive. We saw the gorillas and got out of there, although all of the flights were canceled. So my question to you is, what are you doing now to stay in touch with and help that community that was, with the Hutus and the Tutsis and the conflicts that probably still exist, to help make peace happen.
Right. Part of it is I wrote a book to show how I got bullied, how tribalism affected me, how I overcame that, and how you now work well together. Second part is feature film that's coming up is showing the past trauma, but then how I get back and we deal with that. It also shows a little bit of the American experience where there's a little, issue with the police and then politics, but how I get back and then me and this cop who pulls me over, we become friends. So there is reconciliation in the motion picture. But what you ask is really important. The government has, not me, the government of Rwanda, who took over the government, they established a reconciliatory committee. It has a specific name called Gachacha. They will bring people, murderers that committed genocide, they serve a certain sentence, they bring them back to the community, they sit down with the families of people they kill their families, face to face, and they ask for forgiveness. And then the victims, families of the victims, they have a face-to-face conversation, then they forgive them or pass a punishment that's fair. And that way, they have also established one most important thing that I really was amazing. You cannot describe people by their ethnicity. I'm Tutsi, and the Hutus. We got massacred and killed. You cannot call me a Tutsi, I can't call them Hutus. That's been illegal. It's since then, because people got killed because they could identify you with your ID that described your ethnicity. Well, apparently you had long nose, you were tall. I probably would have survived. But we have moved those identifications that if anything ever happens, it's not gonna be identification because of how you look, what your ID says, and you can't use it. So I haven't done much besides writing about it, talking about it, but the government has put really a good system. And I'm very confident it's gonna work and it shouldn't happen again. And they have a thing every year. We meet as Rwandese group. I'm Uganda, but I participate in it. And it's called Never Again. It's a memorial every June 23rd, I think. It's a memorial to remember the genocide, and we say never again, like the Holocaust. So there's effort in every year commemoration of that Holocaust, genocide.
So I think this is going to be our last question.
We're very grateful that you could be with us today and share your amazing story. One of the things that really resonated with me was when you said the most important thing was hope. And when I hear your story, I guess my question is, was there ever a time when you were close or you were close to losing? How did you not give up hope? That's my question.
All right. Thank you. A lot of times, if they had not given me the visa, it would have crushed me. It would take me time to recover and rebound. If when I got fired, I didn't get a bank loan, they denied me 20 times. The 21st time, I got the startup loan. During those 20 times, my hope was done. Every time I had a bully, I thought I'm not gonna make it through the next day. When I couldn't get school fees, I lost hope. The one thing I know is the next day, I was gonna try again. I like boxing. I did a little bit of training, so I don't look like it. But when you get knocked down, you get 10 counts. If you get up on the 9th count, you still fight. That's my mantra.
Well, Patrick, it's been a journey.
Thank you.
You walked into the exam room and you said, "Hello, Simba. I'm Patrick from Africa." And that began our time together. And then you said, I'm working on a book. Would you mind looking at it to see if it's okay? Oh my gosh, yes. And I learned that you had your first dog with Simba. So you also had people in your corner who helped you, that granddad and others along the ways when you were down. they came along and picked you up. And I heard you say you just kept showing up, kept finding on. And of course, you know, with Rotary and our real focus on polio, which you know all too well, but that international focus has been one that we keep showing up. We keep having the hope that someday, instead of being this close, it will be done. So in your honor, we offer 100 doses to the Polio Plus vaccine. And thank you so much. Keep on keeping on, because we know you will, and we will wave at you and say, when you're in a movie theater, we know that guy. We saw him here. Yanni.
Thank you so much.
So Patrick, we do have a gift for you in addition to the certificate. As you're well aware, Rotary is around the world. I looked it up when you're talking there. So we have 130 clubs in Uganda and there is 10 in Rwanda, 45,000 across the world. This is one of the most powerful clubs in the world, and we thank you for joining us today and speaking to us. Yeah, there was a lot of things that you said there. I do have a question for you. What's the name of the movie?
Sons of the Soil. Sons of the.
And if you could explain
the movie is called Sons of the Soil. It's already registered with the Writers Guild and the Congress. What's that place where they register movies? It's not Tears Run Dry like the book, because the first screenwriter wrote about Tears Run Dry in this story. Well, the producer wanted to write Tears Run Dry plus My Current Life. So there was disagreement. So we went back and had lawyers and court, and then we had to shift from Tears Run Dry, and the producer wrote another that includes my life before and now. So it's called Sons of the Soil. It's about my life as a prodigy, but also through the struggle, then how I got here. And the producer said he's going to kind of embellish a few things, but most of it inspired by my life. So you'll see some things that may not be exactly 100% accurate, but it's all because they told me if a person has an exciting story and they write that day, it gets boring because you only have 1 hour to show the movie. But it's Sons of the Soul, and it's going to work out.
So Patrick, I do invite you to stay with us. In a few minutes, we'll be doing the four-way test to close out our meeting. There's also the final word, which I put together, and I think you really appreciate the quote that we have there today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, let's roll through.